In the last video, I spoke a bit about the structure of player experience in video games, and I ended the clip with this. I don't know if I will be the one to solve or even contribute meaningfully to this problem solution, but mark my fucking words, it must be solved. And in 20 years, whatever the solution is, will be the norm. But that's pretty vague, right? So in this video, I'm going to summarize and say exactly what I mean. That's right, folks. I'm going to predict the future. I'm going to lay out a clear vision for what video games must evolve into. I think what I'm about to describe must occur, and if our industry continues to develop, it cannot occur differently. In short, video game stories, to the extent a developer wants one, must be derived from gameplay. There's a specific way in which I mean that, and a logical double bind that makes it unavoidable. Game developers often talk about ludonarrative dissonance. That is, the idea that story and gameplay don't always fit. This is actually a red herring, because story and gameplay are not separate. It's a bullshit false dichotomy that's actually blocking us from seeing the solution. If you have a deep enough understanding of what story is, this false dichotomy dissolves. On a deep level, a personality is kind of the same thing as a big story. It's a big set of stories about the nature of the world, about other people, about what's valuable and worth doing, and when. Your values are a story, right? Well, hang on here. As I keep bitching about in my other videos, you can't perceive anything without values, without having a goal. You see, perception is a story too, or perhaps it requires a story. We're not used to thinking of these things as stories, but they are. Consider a player who's deeply engaged with RPG progression systems. They're embodying a set of values. They're overcoming challenges, taking risks, making intelligent long-term stat decisions to grow and become stronger. This is the meaning-laden context of their behavior. For those of you who like story, it's all about context, right? You want to get swept up in the experience of participating in a series of actions that are deeply meaningful and compelling, right? Okay, that's exactly what players who don't give a shit about story are doing. Exactly! If they didn't feel that their behavior is meaningful, they wouldn't be doing it. And that context they're acting inside of is a context of values. That means it's a story about what's worth doing. Look, just as you can't have perception without values, you can't have a game without a story. It's impossible. It's just that most of the time, that story is implicit in the mind of the player. And, as I bitched about in my first video, it's implicit and unconscious in the mind of many game developers too. That's why you get these wacky tacked-on stories that are actually fighting the gameplay story. That's what ludonarrative dissonance is trying to point out. This is why Nathan Drake shooting people is insane. It's incredibly dissonant. That's because the gameplay story of Uncharted is one about a mass murderer. There's no fucking way around that. Trying to pin a different story on top of it is just a different story. Now you just have two stories, one that you play and one that you watch. Look, there are, for lack of a better word, primitive aspects to our psyche, like violence. And as we develop, we don't just transcend them, we include them. We contextualize them. Our sense of self grows. The story of you expands to include all the smaller things you do inside that bigger story. What I'm talking about here is what developmental psychologist Abraham Maslow called self-actualization. It's an attempt to bring all of our lower emotional needs into an organized whole under a larger story of self. And it's not easy. If you're going to mediate between all the various impulses in your life, you need to answer some big questions. What are my values? What meaning do I want my life to have? This is the final nail in the coffin. You see, as we become more sophisticated as people, we start becoming context aware. What that means is that people are going to be able to spontaneously understand their in-game behavior. The gameplay story of your game will just be screaming at them. Your game has a story, even if you didn't want to put a story in. It's the set of values that the player needs to adopt to play the fucking thing. If you didn't want to give your game a story, it has a story. If you do want to give your game a story, it has to start from this place. If it doesn't, you still have that gameplay story. There's no escape. This is the logical double bind I mentioned at the start. I'm not saying that you have to narrate every time the player gets XP, but If you have a leveling up system, you're dealing with the domain of growth. So if you want to have a story, you should include that. Why is your player growing? To become a hero? Maybe they're collecting XP to fill an empty hole and stave off going hollow. The gameplay story is absolutely pregnant with meaning. That was all pretty abstract, so I want to end with a concrete example. Let's take a look at Starfield. In Starfield, the game starts with you working in a mine. You touch an artifact and get a vision. This vision suggests no problem or potential, no value system, no context. Perhaps that's not technically fair. I guess it evokes mild curiosity. After that, a guy shows up to buy the relic. Because you had that vision, he gives you his spaceship and tells you to join an exploration group called Constellation. Pirates are after this man's ship, and when you head into space, something insane happens.
The amount of Crimson Fleet hostility has been far more than anticipated. In short, they are after the frontier and will not stop. We will need to deal with the local Crimson Fleet captain.
What my little robot friend just told me is that basically, okay, these pirates are going to keep coming, so the logical thing to do is go to their base on a moon and slaughter every single one of them. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. That's insane. So, I'm a mining guy, for all I know. I'm not Commander Shepard. I'm not a superhero. I work in a mine. I just got my ship for the first time, and I was lucky enough to defend myself against 3 other ships, basically, from pirates. And then it's like, what's the logical thing? Oh, well, let's just go kill them all. Like, if that... In what universe is that the logical thing to do? Like, if you could do that with pirates ever under any circumstances, there wouldn't be pirates. Like, I can't express how much it breaks me out of the experience. I don't even know how to emotionally relate to any of this now. It's like, what are you talking about? Who am I? Am I Superman? Like, it's fucking insane.
After slaughtering all the pirates without any problems, you head to Constellation, where you're given no answers or meaningful motivation either. At this point, I was racking my brain to try and understand what in God's name the context for my behavior was supposed to be. And then I walked into a hospital. 2 NPCs were having a conversation about a problem, and when they were done, they both turned to me and broadcasted their problem to me as if it was the most natural thing in the world.
I know you're right. I just wish they wouldn't keep us waiting so long. I keep telling myself that Reliant Medical is top-notch.
Then it hit me. Oh, this is a narcissism simulator. I'm the most important thing in the entire universe. That's the only way any of this makes any sense. I'm fucking amazing. Of course a guy just gave me his spaceship after I had a vision. Of course I can just waltz into a pirate base and slaughter everyone. Of course the people vulnerably share their challenges and problems with me, and I can just grab the steering wheel of their lives like some kind of narcissistic space Jesus, because all of this is about me. There actually is no higher context here. Starfield, like other Bethesda games, don't want to provide that context because they don't want to interfere with you doing what you want. The claim goes something like this. If you're the type of person who likes to help people, you can do that. If you're the type of person who wants to become the best, you can do that. If you want power, you can do that. Now, these are contexts, to be sure, but they're primitive ones. Sure, you can help people. You can gallivant around the galaxy and help random disconnected people for the sake of helping. No higher reason. Now, of course, real life doesn't work this way. Behavior, like helping people, is appropriate or not based on context. So, the only way to get around that is if everyone in the universe will acknowledge you as centrally important. Space Jesus. In contrast, if you're the kind of person who says, wait, what am I doing? Why am I helping? What purpose does this serve? In other words, if you're looking for a higher context, the game offers nothing for you. It certainly doesn't tell you you're Space Jesus, and they could have. I'll play a narcissist. That's fine. That's fun. I'm putting my fucking face on YouTube. I'm halfway there. Here, I think the relic you touched should have given you Space Jesus powers that allowed you to kill a group of pirates with no effort. Everyone in the universe could hear about your Space Jesus powers and be willing to ask for your help. Maybe that's a little self-indulgent, but what's wrong with a little fantasy? My complaint isn't the narcissism. My complaint is that I spent 3 hours of my life banging my head against my desk saying,
oh my god, I don't give a fuck about what I'm supposed to do at this point. I don't care even a fucking little bit. I don't understand it. It's not clear what my motivation is. I don't give a fuck about these relics. They're not giving me anything, but is this the way most people are? Dude, how are you people not languishing in nihilism? I'll be honest, this bothers me so much that I want to just quit my fucking job and just get a goddamn job working as a fucking janitor. Because it's like, anything is more meaningful than this.
and you could have just told me. There is a context here. You might think you're making a game with no story. You're wrong. Your game has a context. You might think you're making a game that is open to have many contexts. You're wrong. Your game has a context. You might think that you're making a shooter and can have a story that just ignores that. You're wrong. Your game has a context. I want to end on one last thing. I understand that there are games like chess that are played simply for gameplay and nothing else. But even that game happens in a context. I'm not saying you have to add a story to games like chess. I'm saying that if you want to have anything like a narrative component in your game, it has to start here. And if you want to show your players where the fun is in your game, you have to be context aware. Okay, that's it. I hope that was clear. It only took me 3 fucking videos. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, please like, subscribe, share, etc. And I'll see you in the next one, where we finally get off this topic.